Powered by Go Goat Sports in partnership with TSN. It is episode 54, season 4 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, and it is presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. No guest today. We're going to go sans guest today because we've got a lot to chew on with the regular season of the National Hockey League quickly coming to an end. Ray, looks like you're back home, are you?
I am off briefly. Yeah, just 2 more games left for me this season. It's, you were saying like as the season comes down to the end, isn't it crazy? Like, it's such a slog and it's a grind and from September really. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, everybody's got 5 games left.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember playing that you remember the old portable schedules, pocket schedules, the trainers always used to tape one. Every team I was on, they taped one on the inside of the trunk, the equipment trunk. And you'd see it at the rink. It would be flipped open, because they were getting various stuff out of there. And they'd cross off the month when it was finished. And you wouldn't really notice it. And then all of a sudden, there was like only 1 month left. And that's where everybody is right now. I mean, guys are super excited for, that it's the end of the season because of everything that's coming in front of it here. And, like now you just, these games that we're going to end up talking about here, the ones that are the super important ones, but everybody just can't wait to get to the finish line so they can get to the start line.
Look, you were the same, right? You'd have that pocket schedule that would fold up. And if you were lucky enough, you'd get, as a broadcaster, of course, you had access to the full league schedule. But, we'd be traveling and every city I'd stop in, I'd quickly grab like that team's pocket schedule. Right. And then, I'd have the master schedule, which was this big magnet. Remember the NHL used to send that out that you could just strap onto your fridge at home and you were set. That's all you needed. You were ready to roll.
At a time, there was only 21 teams, so that schedule, now it looks like a NASA chart with, you're trying to figure out everything that's going on. And so that's another reason I like now is everything comes into clear focus. Like, it's pretty easy to see the pathway for each team.
Yeah.
Either you're in or you're out. And the ones that are out, if you're on a team that's been out for a while, your focus is the end of these games and where is vacation?
Okay, hold on. You were taking it right where I wanted it to go because, if you're a single dude or married, doesn't matter, right? And you're a non-playoff participant. Yeah. When is it professionally acceptable to lock down those plans and get that trip booked to Mexico, Hawaii, wherever the hell you're going? When is it okay?
You don't have to tell anybody. So when we don't have a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to name the player.
Come on.
So my first year in Hartford, so we're 20. And so you guys, people want to do the investigative work.
Oh, they're going to, for sure they're going to.
It was another 20-year-old.
Oh, okay.
So my dad was coming down for the last week or so of the season. So back in the day, you went into a travel agent and you booked, the trip. So I go in there to book the trip for my dad, and the travel agent gets up to get some paper or something. And so I'm, kind of looking at their desk and I see the name of one of my teammates, and I'm like, wonder where they're going. So because I'm nosy, I just turn the thing around and I look. I'm like, Florida, like April the 8th. I think the season ended April the 9th or April the 5th. I'm like, April the 8th. And we made this. So this was about a month before the end of the season. We made this hellacious run and made the playoffs for the first time.
Come on.
So I know this guy's got this trip booked.
Yeah.
And so as we're skating around right before like between the end of the regular season and the series, we're in practice, and I went up and I said, hey, what are you doing with that trip to Florida? And he looked at me like I had 3 heads. He's like, are you kidding me? Like, how do you know that? And I'm like, that was sloppy. I said, I read it on a desk.
That is so good.
So he was, obviously I had to cancel the trip, but
yeah. And you didn't tell anybody leading up to that? Like not a soul?
Oh, wow. Nobody. Like there's, afterwards, sure, because, once the season was over, everybody thought it was funny, but he had done some math and thought we didn't have a chance. And all of a sudden we did.
That should be an episode, right? Where we put out feelers to a half a dozen alumni guys and just have them come on for 3 minutes each to just tell their most ridiculous, vacation arrangement during the season.
Well, you said if you're single or married, the married guys most often get out of town for their vacation much more organized and much more planned. Yeah. Yeah. The single guys, a bunch of idiots, and you're like, it's the season ends, and you're like, well, where are you going? Yeah. And then some trip gets thrown together like in 7 minutes, and you head off, and nobody even knows where you're staying.
All right, well, let's tack headlines here. And is it going to be the Calgary Flames that go on vacation early, or the Winnipeg Jets? Big showdown last night. Heck of a hockey game between the Flames and the Jets. Winnipeg missed so many chances in that one. Bit of feistiness in this game. Pierre-Luc Dubois engaging with Jacob Markstrom. Flames had a disallowed goal because of goalie interference. And then Winnipeg, as you would expect, Ray, selling the positivity of their situation post-game. They didn't want to talk about losing a crucial game potentially to the Flames. What they wanted to talk about is, okay, well, we have 4 games remaining. They have 3. That game in hand now, as they're in lockstep in the standings, is going to matter. That's going to be the difference maker, and that's where our focus needs to be. I'm not so sure I buy that, but I don't have a feel. Do you have a feel for how this is going to play out? Is Winnipeg going to look after its own, or is there enough momentum in that one win head-to-head last night, Winnipeg losing to Calgary, to push the Flames into that playoff spot?
I don't know how anybody can look at those two teams and say they can feel with any degree of confidence what's coming in the next week. Like it's a total crapshoot for both of them. The game in hand's great unless you lose it.
Yeah.
So, when I look at the schedule, so they have Nashville. That's their game in hand. Yeah, but that's their game in hand.
Yeah, and that's not easy.
And Nashville, I got to give them credit because that team should be dead 6 times. And every time you think they are, they go into Boston and they get a win. And you're like, oh, would you look? Then they have Vegas, and they've got Kevin Lankinen in net on a back-to-back, and they win again. Like, I know nobody, we're not really focused in on Nashville, but they got that Tommy Novak kid.
Yeah.
He's got 17 goals.
I know.
He's never had more than 6 anywhere.
So sneaky.
Like anywhere. No, but anywhere. Like it's not like was a 37 goal scorer in the American League.
Yeah.
Like this is out of nowhere. And without Johansson and Duchesne and Forsberg and Yossi, they're still hanging in. So that game in hand is not a cakewalk. And Calgary's got Nashville in the middle of their 3 games too. So, but here's the key or a key in this thing. They play at home, Winnipeg does, against San Jose. The next night they're in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So if you look at a schedule, that's a schedule loss. Is that Minnesota game. And then you finish in Colorado. And Colorado is in that Central, of course, but everybody's got 98 points. So that game very easily could mean everything to Colorado. I think Winnipeg's in tough. Calgary has to finish a point ahead, right? Because Winnipeg's got the tiebreaker.
Right. That's correct. Yeah.
So, but they're at Vancouver, they've got Nashville, and they're at San Jose. You have 3 teams that aren't in the playoffs. You want to be in the playoffs? The thing's sitting there for you. I think Winnipeg's got a harder schedule because of the Minnesota-Colorado at the end, and one of those is a back-to-back.
Yeah.
It would be a crushing miss for Winnipeg as they've basically played themselves backwards into that race.
But as you said, man, it's impossible. We can dissect the schedule, and we've just done that. But because Calgary beat Winnipeg in a must-win scenario last night, that should give them some feel of advantage, but it really doesn't because of kind of all over the road they've been for much of this season. Pretty much all of this year. Calgary's been up, they've been down, they've been sideways, but mostly down.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's not like they've even put together a string that I recall that you would say, oh, yeah, for a month they were fantastic.
Really. No.
They've just been kind of like muddling around for most of it. So I think they'll muddle around for the rest of it. Like that's kind of what, like, why would it change?
That's fair.
You know,
that's fair. Speaking of a string of games, how about the Oilers? You just did one, and that was Tuesday. And that, for me, was a clinical game, right? You know, you got Leon Draisaitl, who factors in on all of the offense provided by the Edmonton Oilers in that win over the Kings. You know, we could talk about Leon and Connor all day long, right? And even as much as we talk about Draisaitl, it's probably not enough, is it? By comparison?
I got one point on him. I think he is a great example of an exceptional player that has gotten better. He's now into the peak years of his career. And for me, it's one thing, and it's his skating is now, you know, because he's an enormous guy, right? And so he's never going to be light on his feet like McDavid. But if you can visualize like this, you know, like when he has the puck in the corner and he's kind of doing a one-man cycle, he's so much quicker. He came out of the corner a couple of times like he just dusted an LA checker.
Really?
And I was like, whoa, I don't remember him doing that. Like, to me, that's another part of his game that's gone another step. He's an amazing player. He's so good. If Connor McDavid somehow wasn't in the league, like, you know, Draisaitl would be, I know he takes, you know, he gets help from McDavid. Of course he does.
Yeah.
But he would be talked about in a different space. Draisaitl would. Like
in conversation as the best in the league, right?
Yes.
In that conversation.
Yeah. He would be in that.
Yeah.
He would be in that group of players.
Agreed.
And the Oilers have lost, they lost 5 games in regulation since January 11th. That's half a season.
I know.
37 games now. Yeah. They've lost 5 games in regulation.
Yeah. I mean, Tom Gazzola asked me on Edmonton radio this morning as we're recording on Thursday as to whether or not I thought the Oilers were getting enough respect across the league outside of Edmonton. And I feel like they are. I do. Look, I mean, again, it's McDavid, it's Draisaitl, but there's so many good players having wonderful years. Nugent Hopkins, Zach Hyman. Their goaltending looks like it's kind of coming online here of late, with Jack Campbell playing better, and Stu Skinner's had a really good year. So in saying all of that, let's have some fun here and try and rank top Stanley Cup contenders.
Okay, I'm going to butt in right now. You sent that note.
Yeah, and you didn't like it, did you?
No, I hated it. So right away I go to the standings. Yeah. Right? Because I want to see, I have in my head who the best teams are, but I want to look at them.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. So in the West, the top 6 teams are separated by 6 points. And you want to pick a favorite coming out of there. Oh, thanks, Strikes.
Yeah, I know, man.
Like I don't like the league's vision of what parity really does to the league. Like, it makes it more competitive and all that stuff. I don't like that selling point.
Yeah.
And then I look at it and I'm like, well, there's 7, 8, 9 teams that could probably win. And so guess what? Parity probably does its job as it comes into the playoffs like this.
Yeah, so you're not going to give me a top 3 is what you're going to
Well, no, I will. I'll be wrong. I don't mind.
Well, we're all going to be wrong. That's fine. That's fine.
Look at you. That's fine.
I'm saying, look, okay, I'll start and then you can kick me in the shins. So As much as, I mean, it's impossible not to buy what the Boston Bruins have done in the East this year.
Yep.
I mean, they're going wire to wire in the regular season. And when you look at the pedigree of the players who have had just ridiculously strong seasons, you know, how can you doubt them as a top Stanley Cup contender? You can't. You can't. It's just the playoffs for me are a different beast. I think the Oilers do deserve respect for how deep they went last year in the playoffs. And the fact that they're having a tremendous second half of the regular season, and you know, just top to bottom, story after story after story. I think you could build a case for Edmonton being top three. For me, I would have Boston top three, and then it gets dicey after that. If you're looking at Colorado as the defending champ,
okay. So you've mentioned the three teams I have on my list.
Okay,
and I don't think anybody in the East is going to beat Boston. Now, a key injury,
yeah,
you know, certainly can change a lot of that. Somebody getting on a heater in that one series, never mind for 6 weeks. It's just the one series.
Yeah.
And out they go. But I do think Boston's the best team in the East. And the fact that everybody's jammed in the West, I'm really not going to be surprised if anybody of those top six come out of there.
Okay.
I really wouldn't be. Like, if you look at the series, Dregs, like if you know, you're old, if the season ended today,
yeah.
Right? Dallas, Minnesota, would you be shocked if either team won that series? Dallas or Minnesota? You wouldn't be.
No.
You'd go, oh,
no.
They win. Yeah. Edmonton and LA. You'd go, like, you know, so the game the other night, Edmonton or LA doesn't have Mikey Anderson, who's in their top pair. They don't have Kevin Fiala, who's their leading scorer.
Yeah.
And the game was a slugfest.
Yeah.
So any of those teams, and then that doesn't include Colorado and Vegas. And so you're like, yeah, one of those six could be a real contender. But I have Boston, Edmonton, Colorado in that order. And I put Colorado below because of the questions around the health of their lineup.
Okay, so Boston 1, Edmonton 2, Colorado 3.
You know who's made an enormous difference there is Matthias Ekholm.
Has he ever?
Oh, man. Okay. He pushes everybody down on the, you know, where they should be as far as the pairs. The Oilers had this thing with Duncan Keith and Bouchard last year. And, you know, Bouchard had an excellent year. Keith retires, and the first half of the year, Bouchard's all over the place. And they get Ekholm, and all of a sudden, Bouchard is back to a stable player. So Duncan Keith had this thing with him. This is my side of the ice. This is your side of the ice. If you come over here, that means nobody's over there because I'm not going over there. And so it gave Bouchard like real structure as to, you know, not trying to do too much because he's still such a young guy. Well, Ekholm basically cleans up half the ice all the time.
Yeah.
And so now you only have to worry about this. And it's been a really, really big help for Ekholm or for Bouchard.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how things break down here in the weeks ahead. East remaining games, you know, we've chewed a little bit here on the West, starting with Calgary and Winnipeg, but you've got Florida, Pittsburgh, the Islanders all still in that battle.
No, that's a mess.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
So Florida has Ottawa, Washington, Toronto, Carolina. That's not an easy road to follow here with 4 remaining.
Only one road game, though. Only one road game at Washington.
Right. Yeah. Pittsburgh is Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago, Columbus. And the Islanders have Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, Washington, and the decimated Montreal Canadiens to wrap up the regular season. So again, let's start with Florida. How much of a home schedule factors into their advantage? Because if you look at the remaining games, Florida's got a tougher schedule, no question, aside from they're not on the road.
So go back a couple of months, and for some reason, Florida had a crazy amount of games at home. And in the last 2 months, I want to say they left the state of Florida twice.
Yeah.
You know, like something ridiculous like that. So that does matter. Miles matter, like on the body.
Yeah.
So I look at that. You've got Ottawa, which they'll be a pain. Like that game will be a pain.
Yes, it will.
And then they're at Washington, and Washington's out now. That'll be, they're no easy games, but the fact that they're out, I think, matters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a winnable game for them. Toronto's going to be in the resting phase, still just kind of tinkering around to make sure
load management.
Yeah, but they're in so that game becomes easier, and then Carolina, it's going to be the last day of the season, and you're going to try and your guys are trying to get health or be healthy, start the playoffs. I like Florida's schedule, actually. I don't like the Pittsburgh schedule. They've got to start. They got Minnesota at home, and they just got blown out of the water. Pittsburgh did again on the road. They lost 5-1. They looked slow and old, and I was quite surprised. Then the next night they're in Detroit, and that'll be a tough back-to-back for them.
Yeah.
Now, Chicago at Columbus, you think they should win both of those, but again, the Penguins they're kind of, in a sense, Pittsburgh's like Calgary. Like, if you know what you're getting there, you're different than everybody else, because it's a crapshoot. And I think the Islanders they got Tampa and then Philly at Wash and Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I kind of think the Islanders are going to be one of the three teams, and it comes down to Florida and Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I don't really know why I would have that confidence. I just kind of do. But if Pittsburgh misses the playoffs, do we see how many more playoffs will Sidney Crosby have?
Yeah.
Because this team is teetering on, I think I said last time, like the 2015 Red Wings.
Yeah.
Once you miss, you miss.
You're going to miss for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be too bad when you look at the future Hall of Famers there with Crosby and Malkin and Letang. But, they can change, right? Probably won't, but there'll be options if they want options. Is there any professional pride in playing a role of spoiler at this time of year?
Yes. Especially if you don't like the team. Like somebody will say, okay, let's screw these guys' season up right now. Like, it's all you got left. And so, yes, for sure.
Mm.
And here's the other part of it too, is like, even though the games don't matter for those teams, Dregs, they do matter. They matter to you. They matter to, for a lot of players on those teams, there's a chance always to make a good impression.
Yeah.
And I was told, you remember a player, Stu Gavin, used to play for the Leafs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so Stewie came
North Stars, yeah.
Yeah, he came to Hartford after he left Toronto. And I remember him telling me one time, it was my, my first year, and I had just been called up, and he said something to the effect of, there's a lot of guys that folded in a game that you're getting blown out in, or a game that you're losing. That's a time to make an impression. And that always stuck with me, that if your effort and your production in a game where everybody else is kind of taking a half a step back, if that stands out, that gives you something to hang your hat on and the coaches to notice, and then you get another opportunity. There's a lot of guys these games at the end of the year are critically important for.
Yeah, yeah. Ryan O'Reilly back in the lineup for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just past a month since he suffered the finger injury, which was surgically repaired. Practiced on Wednesday as the 3C, which makes sense to me. We had a quiz question on Tuesday as part of our Leaf game. And O-Dog and Frankie Corrado both thought that, you know what? He needs to be in the top six and figure it out. Either he's on the wing or Tavares is on the wing. I like the look of Matthews, Tavares, and O'Reilly. 1, 2, 3. How about you? Does that make sense to you? Or, do you like having that level of compete higher up in the lineup for you?
Well, I like him in the middle. I think he's so responsible and he can still produce, in a 50-point range at the other end. I think it makes them a really well-balanced team. That's not to say that he doesn't start there, and through portions of the game, he's on the wing. He moves with, the way they've got their lines structured right now, if you go to Tavares's wing, now you're breaking up that line. That moves, maybe you do that and you move Marner back to Matthews, and you load up at times in your top six. And I think that most certainly will happen. But I like this configuration. I think that when I think of O'Reilly, I think of him in the middle of the ice. Maybe that's because where he's played almost all of his career, but I think of him as like a guy you can build your line around in a responsible way.
Nice.
And that also gives you a line that you can play. You're going into a first round series against Tampa.
Yeah.
Who do you want to play against Braden Point? Guy's got 48 goals.
Yeah. That matchup matters. Yeah.
Yeah. And it matters. And if you can neutralize them, and then, if you can somewhat neutralize that line, I think you've gone a long way to beating Tampa.
Head of the snake, as Hitch used to call it, right?
Oh, he did. Cut off the head of the snake.
Cut the head of the snake off. You're going to win. That's how you win. Got to get the head of the snake. All right. Those are your headlines.